We are the 7th of August 2022, and I have decided to make a video to tell you my life, empirical, intellectual and spiritual, as I understand and as I'm aware of this at this moment in time. And I know that when this video goes out on the internet, anyone will be able to watch the video, but I intend to make this video specifically for the people which are listed here. And here is my name, my empirical name, and I will put my address in the description when the video is done and published. But I don't know when I will publish the video. I do not intend to do this immediately because I have still work to do, and it may be tomorrow, maybe in a few days, I don't know, but I still have work to produce before publishing this video. And I would like to talk to you whose name is on this list, because if you watch this video, you will know, at least partly I would say, who or what I am. Maybe you will know more when you watch this video about me than I do now know about myself. Like I said, here we are the 7th of August, but I want to speak to you as I understand myself, and to tell you your relationship to me, while I can speak rather calmly and peacefully, because I'm not sure that I will be able to speak peacefully or to speak at all, because my intellectual and spiritual development has led me to a point where I've asked myself, what am I? And I have discovered a couple of months ago that I know myself to be what the writings of the German philosopher Hegel call the absolute ID, but I do not fully understand how it has come to be so, or why it is so, and what it does mean. I am quite ignorant, so I will discover, I guess, in the coming days or weeks, or I don't know. But I would like to be as honest as I can with you, the people on this list, with the consciousness which is mine at this moment is in time, that which I call my empirical consciousness. And I have discovered that I have a subconscious and a higher self, to use ordinary language. So I will speak. I have prepared the document in the past few days, but what I speak, what I say, is my conscious self on an empirical level speaking. I had an experience of identifying with God in August 2018, 4 years ago. And this did not happen randomly. It was the result of a process of intellectual awakening, to speak in ordinary language, which had lasted 2 weeks, from August or September 2016 until August 2018. And I will show you the process. But over the course of these 2 years of tremendous intellectual development, I had spiritual experiences with some of you, and I had, I say, spiritual connections with Stella, the American girl living back then in Virginia, with Forgotten Roots, Carol, with Thulean Perspective, Varg and Marie Cachet. And here the dates are a little bit, yeah. So here's the date when this occurred. My first spiritual experience, it happened while I was watching one of Forgotten Roots videos in August 2017, and I was connected to you. I imagine that you will watch this video at some moment, and if you don't, well, I'm just talking to myself, I guess. in August 2017, I had my first real spiritual experience, and I felt connected to you by discovering my spiritual self, one might say, through your words in a video. That's not how I envisioned this, but I felt spiritually connected to you in a very powerful way, and it was really my first spiritual experience, and it has had a very important impact upon my development. And I have been connected, I have followed you broadly. Here I speak with empirical memory. I discovered you, I think, in June 2017, and I probably stopped following you in January 2018, but then I bought one of your books in 2019. But this was the time when I was in intellectual connection with you indirectly through watching your videos, etc. My second spiritual experience happened with Varg during this period when I was a follower of the Thulan perspective, the channel, and during the same period I had various connections and even powerful experiences with Marie Cachet during broadly the same period. So I stopped following Forgotten Roots. I think I speak from memory. In January 2018, I stopped following Marie. It's not that I consciously stopped, but I don't remember having experienced any spiritual connection after this time. The last one I remember with Varg was April 2018. So I had a spiritual connection with you three, and with Stella. It happened, we'll see that later, I think in January 2018. So after I had my most intense spiritual experience while watching one of your videos, I thought about you a lot in August 2018 when I had my God experience. We'll talk about that later. And I stopped following you broadly in December 2018 because of an event that we might talk about eventually, I don't know. And I know these people. Hyperborean Reflections, I discovered your channel in 2019, and I followed you for a few months when I was in hospital on an empirical level. And Caroline, I discovered you in June 2018, and I've been a constant follower except during 2020 and 21, where I stopped getting interested in spirituality at all. And Jean, I speak in English, I could speak in French. I discovered you in June 2018, and I know that you had a spiritual experience, your conversion to Protestant Christianity through what you call divine intervention, one might say. So these three people, I know that you had spiritual experiences, and I could, if I had the opportunity to talk with you, I could explain to you why these experiences occurred, but I've never had the opportunity to communicate with you. Whereas with these three persons, I exchanged a few comments on YouTube in the year 2018. I talked mostly with Forgotten Roots. And Apollonian Germ, eventually at some moment you might receive my video, or I don't know, watch them and find them worthy of attention, I don't know. I can read your mind. So you never expressed any spiritual experience you had, and I never was spiritually connected in a truly spiritual fashion, but I am intellectually connected with you in the sense that I can read your mind, basically. I can understand you very well. And also, I can understand these people very well, but I've never had a direct spiritual connection, whatever. And Dr. Deep State, I was briefly in spiritual contact, one might say, but I've never... The other people, they have gone through, except Jean Robin and Dr. Deep State, they have all gone through the path of the traditional European religion, one might say, whereas Jean Robin and Dr. Deep State have gone directly from atheism to Christianity, or I don't know if you were raised Christian, it doesn't matter, but I feel more connected to these people because they have gone through the path of the European religion through paganism. But I know that you are connected to Apollonian German. I know that you understand a lot about reality in a sense. So yeah, that's why there are no colors for you, but yeah. Okay, that was the introduction. So if I had to be honest, I think that I think of you as some sort of my spiritual family, my first spiritual family, because you are the ones with whom I was awakened to spirituality. And I understand why, because it's not, I can understand, and if any of you watch this video someday, you will understand why we are connected and why I can understand you, and eventually maybe you will understand me at some moment. But at this moment in time, 7th of August, I don't know if I will be conscious when or if you receive my videos someday. If you do, I don't know in what state of mind or state of being I will be, but what I want to say is that I think of you as some sort of my first spiritual family. And if we had to use determination of anthropology, Stel Bell, I thought of you as my wife, or my wife, my feminine half, so to speak. Apollonian germ, you would be some sort of my brother. Hyperborean reflections, I thought of you as some sort of a son. Caroline, maybe I will no longer be in a mood to laugh, or maybe I will no longer be there at all, I don't know. But of course, Caroline, you would be some sort of my mistress, because you are intellectually, you are very exciting. I cannot deny this. Yeah, so it brings the question, if you receive my message, what will you think about me? First, I've thought that you might have negative thoughts about me, because I might have negative thoughts as well. But what if you receive my message, what will Stella think about Caroline? I prefer not to think about this. There are worse problems to have, I guess. I've thought of you also as a brother, in a way. Varg, I thought of you as my first spiritual father, my mentor, my teacher, my father. And I admired you tremendously, and that's why I might have a problem, because I have problems with my relationship with my father, whoever he may be. Marie, I thought of you during this period as my sister. And Dr. Deep State and Jean Robin, I don't really understand the connection, but I had no family ties with you. You are just spiritual Christians, one might say. So that's what I wanted to say. And I know that I will share my personal documents in the coming days. Some of them, and the others I will keep them on my computer, but I am willing to share them in the long run eventually, depending on how long the run lasts, I don't know. But also I know that I will produce videos which will make my channel successful eventually, and when it does, people will be interested in what I have to say, and for good or bad, I don't know, but they will be interested. And I don't know how I will react. I don't know what will happen, but I know that reality will change on a fundamental ontological level. That's why at this moment I'm not even sure that I will ever be able to talk. I mean, I am talking, but that reciprocal exchange of words hopefully in a peaceful fashion, one might say, because I've imagined so many scenarios, but I've come to a point where I'm becoming sick of imagining what might happen, and I have decided just to act and to do what I think is right. And the reason why I make this video is because over the past 5 months I have gone through a tremendous intellectual and spiritual process of growth. And one of my plans, which is what I call a good plan, although it has failed, I wanted to make a lecture on speculative logic to you, while knowing that it would become public, but I intended to convince you to make a full lecture so that you might understand yourself and me and your life and our connection. But I understood that I cannot, because this is not what I was supposed to do in a way. But working to produce this video about logic, which eventually will never occur, I mean, not at least in the way I thought it would, has helped me understand an enormous amount of aspect of reality. And I know that the best thing, or maybe I'm deluding myself, but I think the best thing I can do is to share my most private at least some aspects of my most private experience, namely my empirical life, with the elements which might be relevant, I think, with you, which means with everyone, but I think that you, if you are on this list, you might use these elements to understand me and eventually to unite in a positive way with me. Or if I become negative, which is evil or dangerous, not on an empirical level, I am not dangerous on an empirical level, but if my thoughts or my words or my ideas become dangerous for you or for others or for myself, if I am worth defending at some level, you will have to use the information that I give you to fight against me in order to prevent me from being really negative. These are the kind of scenario that I envision, but they are a part of reality, of possibility, because you have, I know this, you have helped me remember who I am, my experience of God. But being who I am implies for me a lot of suffering. Now I'm in a calm mood, but I understand when I'm experiencing ontological trauma and despair and profound suffering, I am in a state where I suffer from my suffering, and I would say I resent, I try to struggle against my own resentment, but I am, and my own anger, as they call this, but a part of me has a negative relation with the people who helped me remember who I am. So in a sense, I owe you whatever good I can produce. So I owe you a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom and strength and courage, and I have loved and admired every one of you on this list. Mostly I've admired the Thulan perspective, and I have loved Stella. But the question is, can you love a person that you have never talked to, you've never met? This is one of the kind of questions that I ask myself. But I owe you a lot, but at the same time, you are not responsible, but I associate in an unfair way, maybe, but the idea of me remembering or being reminded of who I am and the suffering that it implies, I associate this with you because it is through the spiritual experiences that I've had with you that I have come to the remembrance, theoretical at least, of myself. And that's why I might have a very ambiguous relationship with you, because of the reason that I've just mentioned. But I know that I'm in a state of stability, emotional and psychological at this moment, and that when I experienced really dark phases over the past few months, I knew that if I turned really negative, really evil, I would have to be defeated, or the aspects of me which are evil would have to be defeated, and that's I have to share with others the most intelligent, because in case I haven't said it yet, you are the most intelligent empirical individual in the world. In this order: Stella, Apollonian germ, Dr. Deep State, is very intelligent, but it's a little bit different, but that's the order that I envision. You are the most intelligent, but there is feminine intelligence and masculine intelligence. So the most intelligent empirical mind, masculine mind, is Apollonian germ. I have the absolute certainty of that. So whatever I might say or think or do, whatever, I cannot deny that you are brilliant and you are enlightening, and if light is good, you are good. But an excess of light sometimes can blind oneself. But anyway, but you are, whatever I say, you are brilliant, and you are very smart. But yeah, so I have taken the decision, which I think is the correct one at this moment from a moral standpoint, to share my most intimate life experience, in a way. I mean, not everything, because first, I am not conscious of everything, and second, I try to be as open and as to share as much as possible. But yeah, I know myself to have negative aspects, but I also have discovered recently that I'm not completely negative. I have also positive and enlightening aspect as well. So I don't want to annihilate myself completely. Anyway, I think it's not possible, but I have grown in confidence in the sense that I thought that at some point that I was completely bad and that you were the good guys, which might happen at some moment, I don't know, but there's also partly good and light and even wisdom in me. So yeah, I'm kind of in a process of evolution, but whatever. But I have taken the decision to share my intellectual path, my intellectual development as I understand this. I'm maybe deluding myself, but that's how I envision it. So you will see my whole intellectual process, and if you find good to bring good into the world for you or for others or for me or for everyone, that's fantastic. And if you find a good which might help defeat my own evil, it's good also. If you find evil to bring evil into the world, you might have a problem with me. But I don't think you will do that. But what I say seriously is that there are really serious aspects in existence, and if I turn negative against you or against myself without deserving, or against others, if I become threatening in a negative sense, you, because you are the smartest, maybe the wisest, maybe the bravest and the strongest, probably, I don't know, you will have to use some of the information that I share with you against me. I understand this. I may not accept the consequences of this decision when or if they come back at me, but I accept them on a transcendental level now, and I have accepted them for a few days and weeks, because I know they are the right thing. If there has to be conflicts and struggle, I want the people that I might have a problem with, at least at some moment, to be able to fight back if I become threatening. So the best I can do, I wanted to make a great lecture on logic. I will try to, but for everyone, but here it's specifically for you, while knowing that anyone can access this information once they become public. So you will hear my life story, intellectual, as I envision this. There are embarrassing moments, but I am willing to accept certain aspects of the embarrassment. So it has been 22 minutes, and I will begin the problem. So here's the story of what I consider to be my life on an empirical but mostly intellectual level. So officially I was born in 1992, but if I experienced myself as a metaphysical entity at some moment, this brings a question about how did I come here. So that's the first problem. My first memories, as far as I can remember, they date from 1995. So here I listed my intellectual life, the major intellectual events or discoveries, and the major influences, and also there are intellectual currents, personality traits, the evil or negative traumas that I have experienced. So at the age of 15, I had a teenage romance, which has been maybe the most important event in my life. And I would later associate the memory of the girl that I was in love with what I called Europe and Germany. So it has played a tremendous role in my later political and even metaphysical development. In 2009, I dropped out of high school and I lived isolated in my apartment between 2009 and 2013. And I did not go out publicly, so I lived almost completely isolated in my apartment. And so these are my first intellectual awakening occurred in 2013 when I discovered the value of literature. But now I will show what the personality traits and the evils, the sins and the traumas that I've associated with this period. So I had a happy childhood, middle class, low middle class, but rather well off. I was a very good student until 2007. So until the age of 15 years old, I was a very good student. I'm well-mannered, polite, shy, rather boring, introvert. I have not suffered any abuse of any kind. In 2007, I was distracted by love, one might say, and I wrote here probably hormones, but actually this was my love story, which had tremendous impact upon my development of whatever or whoever I become or am or have been. I started to have catastrophic grades because I was not interested in school anymore. I isolated myself socially. In 2010, so at the age of 17, about to turn 18, I became conscious of the suicide of my biological father, and I lived trapped in my room apartment from 2009 to 2019, but so for 10 years, but it began in 2009, so I was desocialized in a way. I lived alone in my room with one or two members of my close biological family or relatives, but yeah. I developed in 2013 an inferiority complex due to 4 years of isolation. I felt completely stupid actually, and I felt inferior because I thought that everyone else had gone to university and got a college degree. So I thought that I became aware of what I thought my stupidity and my lack of intelligence. And in regard to the sins, the evils or the negative traumas that I've experienced during this period, so the first 15 years of my life, I intentionally hurt a girl, not physically, but maybe emotionally, slightly, but I did this consciously because she had no father either. So she was like me, so I kind of felt close to her, but I hurt her nonetheless, precisely because she was like me. So I remember doing this. Here it's really already embarrassing, but probably when I turned around 7 or 8 or I don't know, I developed sexual curiosity. I discovered that I had sexual parts basically, and I was sexually curious for a while with a few other persons. So I had no sexual experience, but it's just sexual curiosity which developed during childhood. I thought this to be irrelevant, but it's maybe one of the most embarrassing things in my life, but I'm willing to confess this. When I was also in my 8, 9, I was sometimes considered dark-skinned, so I don't know if it's on an unconscious level it plays a role for my future political development at some moment in my life, but I never thought that I was white until 2017, but when I was a kid, I was sometimes told that I was dark-skinned. So I don't know, I put this because it might be important, but or completely irrelevant, I don't know. I did evil in my youth or teenager. I did almost never consciously wanted to hurt anyone. So I did not thought of myself, and when I look back, as being evil, but I know that I failed to do the right thing due to a lack of will. And I always blame this on the absence of my father, which if he had taught me how to have more will, I would have done the right thing when I had to. So I blame my lack of strength for all my evils. I mean, for not doing the right thing. So it's the absence of good which has caused the evils, but actually it was not great evils, but actually it was on a moral standpoint. It's not the consequences, but the moral principle which was broken, namely my failure to act right in a righteous manner. Here again a very embarrassing anecdote, but like I said, if you have to use embarrassment to defeat me if I become negative, then do it, and if not, okay. When I was in my 13 years old, I was afraid that I might become homosexual because I lacked the presence of my father. I never was attracted, that is not consciously, I had no attraction to any man, so I had no doubt about my sexual identity, and I was attracted by girls and women my age, but I read somewhere that young boys who grew up without a father have a tendency to become homosexual, so I was afraid that, again, the absence of my father would have what I thought a negative impact upon me. That's what I thought. If this is embarrassing and it has to be used against me, okay. 2018, I now consider this as a sin because of my Christian perspective. I had my first sexual intercourse with the girl that I was in love with, and this may be a sin, I don't know. And later I experienced temptation. I was attracted partly by another girl but I still loved my girlfriend, but I was attracted by another girl, which being in a relationship and being appreciated by another person of the other gender made me arrogant. So I betrayed the person I love in a way by being tempted by another. So that's a Christian story. I never thought up until a few years ago that it would become important, but actually it is. So yeah, my sins, I was a coward because I gave up on the people that cared about me in a way. I was stupid. I developed skin problems, dissocialization. I experienced shame. Here I did something which, again, the immediate consequences are not negative, but on a metaphysical level, it's really evil. I simply, in 2011, I consciously, or out of despair maybe, impregnated the girl that I loved because I wanted to prevent her from leaving me. This is evil. There's no other word to basically to risk the life and the health and to ruin potentially the life of another just for my own sake is now that I reflect back upon this, it was serious wrong, but it was fortunately it was prevented for whatever. But I did this. I've been lazy, weak, depressed, suicidal for many years. I watched porn, practiced masturbation, and I tried some weird sexual experiences, all on my own. But I will not give all the details. If I have to, I will. But it's just that, yeah, I've had weird experiences, but just alone. Yeah. And I had the belief in 2014 or 2013 that after 4 years of inactivity, due to my social isolation, my brain had degenerated at the age of 21. So this is how I function psychologically, my personality traits. Namely, I cling to the belief that if you are not a genius at 21 years old, it's already too late and your brain is degenerating. And this is one of the reasons why I became some sort of a fanatic to acquire knowledge, because I tried to prevent the degeneration of my mental faculties. And this is an important part of my psyche, because I never checked the premise. I held firm the belief that at 21 years old, I was already too old intellectually. So yeah. Okay, now the most intimate aspect. It's embarrassing, but I cling to my belief that I have to speak what I know about myself if it can be used against me in negative circumstances. Yeah. Okay, so after 4 years of isolation, I resumed my studies on a high school level until 2016. For 3 years between 2013 and 2016, I studied and read books. So I partly worked, but it was not really work, but it was intellectual work, one might say. And I became self-taught in many topics. That's what I did for 3 years, basically. And my major influences were my first intellectual hero. So in 2011, I read a book by Nietzsche. I didn't understand anything. I wrote a few jokes a couple of days ago. I will keep them. I will be honest with myself. My first hero was Rousseau, and I worshipped him intellectually. He wrote beautifully. He was kind, but also strong. He was honest. I loved Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I bought almost all of his books, and he really is my. I had a teenage romance and a love, a sweetheart, and Rousseau was my intellectual sweetheart, one might say. And yeah, and I read Steinbeck, Hemingway, Dostoevsky. So here is my political intellectual development. Zizek, Karl Marx, Kluska, French Marxist, Spinoza, Michéa, Onfray. These are conservative left-wing French authors. And the ideology, so here's the intellectual currents. I was a socialist. I became a socialist. So I had absolutely no political affiliation whatsoever until broadly 2013-14, when I became as a socialist, a Marxist, a communist, then ecology, philosophy. I bought my first book about Hegel, and I became a conservative socialist. So for 3 years of intellectual development, between 2013 and 2016, these are the kind of ideas that I held. Yeah. So a major intellectual event was the murder of a priest in France in July 2016. It forced me to reconsider completely my leftist worldview. So the authors and the ideology that I had held to be true proved inadequate to explain the murder of this priest. So that's why I started to read right-wing authors. Here are a name. I started to discover. So here we are in the the chronology. I will just make a pause and put the month at the proper place. Okay, it should be clearer. So yeah. So I first read a right-wing author in September 2016. I discovered November 2016 the relationship between IQ and crime, started to learn about the Great Replacement and the relationship between ethnicity and religion. And 2017 I discovered the JQ, the relationship between IQ and wealth in March. In April, I vaguely became aware of a cosmic consciousness, and I discovered the Thulan perspective in June 2017. If I had to be honest, up until June 2017, after less than a year of intellectual development, I still thought of Varg as some sort of neo-Nazi freak. And I would still think that, because I have judged people for good or for bad, but I have judged. But at this moment, that's what I thought, basically. So I was kind of attracted, but also found this very weird. And here are some of the authors. So do we see the chronology? Yeah. It's not very... So yeah, in this period, I discovered Zemmour, which is a French conservative, Stephen Molyneux, Boris Lelay, a far-right French nationalist, Laurent Oberton, William Pierce, just the writings about the history of the white race, the relationship between ethnicity and religion. I understood that the Protestants were mostly Nordic Europeans, and it helped me understand the history of Europe and the history of religions and the world. Namely, there is a strong correlation between religious affiliation and ethnicity. I discovered Ann Coulter, Alfred Rosenberg, Kevin MacDonald, Richard Lynn, Jared Taylor, the bell curve. So all this happened in a matter of a few months, in a way. And the tendencies, the intellectual currents that I adopted in this period were French conservatism, survivalism. I became anti-Islam. I discovered sociobiology, permaculture, white nationalism, alt-right. I was not an anti-Semite at this moment because I just discovered the JQ, but it didn't turn me into an anti-Semite at first. And here, in the evil, sins, or negative trauma, I experienced anger against the Muslim immigrants coming to Western Europe in this period, because I was anti-Islam and I was in the theory of the Great Replacement. So I was angry against Muslims in the West because I thought that they were replacing what I was becoming. I was growing to identify as my people. But it has to be made clear that this event, for instance, March 2017, before this, I had no consciousness that I was white. I had read or heard far-right white nationalists, but I still did not thought of myself as white. So I discovered that I was white only at the age of 24, about to turn 25. So it's important. So yeah, continue my development. I discovered pre-World War II anthropology, race and intelligence in June of 2017. In August, I discovered the banking system, the history of National Socialism, the scheming of the elites, and I had my first mystical experience with Forgotten Roots in August 2017. So my intellectual awakening began in July or August or September 2016, so less than a year after I had already my first mystical experience, after having gone through all these steps. So I traveled very fast: conservatism, Islamophobia, for lack of a better word, sociobiology, white nationalism, alt-right, paganism, race realism, and I did not identify as a European nationalist, but if it had to be defined, I could be defined as white nationalist, precisely as a European nationalist, because white nationalism, it lasted a few months, but it was empty for me. I did not consciously think, okay, it's empty, but I unconsciously filled with content, namely with religious, cultural content. And this is, you take white nationalism plus paganism, and you get European nationalism, basically. But I did not consciously thought of myself, no, I'm a European nationalist. But retroactively, if I had to define what I was, this is, yeah, I was afraid of the political tension in France in this period. So, yeah. So this is how I developed. And yeah, here in yellow, the people which would travel with me for a long time, from this moment on, so from June 2017, I would grow intellectually with these people, basically. Here I bought this book, which was very important for me. I discovered Stoddard and Grant, etc., etc. I discovered Emerson when I had my first mystical experience. Nyborg. I reread Peirce, but not the history of the white race, but the cosmotheist view, which is connected with Spinoza. I found Spinoza in Alfred Rosenberg, so I had always a special relationship with certain Jews, so I was, yeah. So yeah, in October 2017, I started to identify with cosmotheism. I experienced synchronicities in the month of November. I became aware of the relationship between language, paganism, and the cosmos. I started to believe in reincarnation. I had a tremendously powerful mystical experience with Wagner's Parsifal in December 2017. And that's what I said to myself. I thought about Heraclitus, becoming and change. The rational is real, the real is rational. The image of the rising sun, which is connected to the philosophy of Hegel. And I had an experience at the beginning of the month of December, I think it was the 1st of December 2017, I was connected with the Thulan perspective, with Varg, with you, Varg. I imagine that maybe you will watch this video, and I said to myself, I found my spiritual father, what I had unconsciously always been looking for. So I found my father, and I talked for the first time about God. I said that the proof that there is a God is that he helped me find what I was looking for, namely a spiritual father that I identify as Varg. So when I had my first mystical experience in August, I didn't talk about God, I talked about the spiritual realm, so to speak. But here, for the first time, at the beginning of December, I wrote this, I talked about God for the first time. I mean, maybe I mentioned God when I was a teenager, but consciously with a religious content. And also this sentence, that's when I knew it was from Hegel, but I knew very vaguely about Hegel, so I was beginning to discover Hegel, so to speak. I discovered Julius Evola. I made a connection between Greek mythology, the myth of Prometheus, and the story of the 20th century with Hitler. And that's when I started to lose my belief in an ordinary chronology and an ordinary causality. So I started to up until this moment, my path, whatever one thinks about this path, it is the path that many Westerners, mostly young white males, take in Europe and in the West. But so up until then, it was kind of normal for those who have the opportunity to follow the path. But here, I really started to lose a sense of connection with ordinary reality, because the categories of chronology and causality were seriously shaken, so to speak. I started to briefly study women and libertarianism at the end of December. I bought this book, which was important. And so paganism, it's really towards the month of November 2017 that I identify consciously as a pagan, with also always a a Spinozian touch, a philosophical touch. So I was never into the pagan myth. Literally, I was more it was more a philosophical perspective, and I was influenced also by Steven Pinker, Rimbaud, Nietzsche, Plato. So I discovered great European thinkers and poets, and this is the time when I communicated with Varg and Marie and Forgotten Roots through the mediation of their YouTube channel. So I learned a lot, and I developed tremendously, and very fast in a way. And that's when I bought Le Secret de l'Ours, and I had countless synchronicities during this period overall. Okay, and at the end of December 2017, I got interested, after a comment and a video by Varg, in quantum physics, Hinduism, and German idealism. So I already knew that I had traveled so many, I had studied so many topics in such a short amount of time, in a 1.5 year, but I already knew that unconsciously the truth or the meaning or whatever was to be found in, I believed it was to be found in quantum physics, Hinduism, or German idealism. These were some of the topic of the most important topics that I hadn't yet explored fully. Okay, in my personality traits or evils, nothing to report in this period. January 2018. I started to experience depression, not psychological, but ontological depression, despair, and I started to believe in the Jewish prophecies of the Ancient Testament. After having gone through all these steps, and here I had tremendous spiritual development. I suffered a lot, but also I discovered truth about poetry. I experienced intellectual hell. I briefly experienced what I could call absolute reality, and it was connected with my reading and understanding of Marie Cachet's book. I tried to communicate with Forgotten Roots, Marie Cachet, and Varg about my experience of metaphysical truths, but I failed. And that's when I started to, I tried to communicate with Apollonian Germ for the first time. I started to think about death because I understood intellectually my life, and I envisioned the possibility of death. I started to see our spirits in modern European pop culture. So I started to develop abilities of detecting patterns, one might say. And I listed, after a very intense, 1.5 years of a very intense intellectual development, I went tremendously fast, actually, in my development. And that's why I say this for myself and for those who might be interested. I did not have the time to be a conservative or an Islamophobe or a white nationalist. It lasted for a few months, and I did not say, oh, I'm a white nationalist and then I will stop. No, it's just, it was part of my process. I incorporated knowledge and understanding in my process, but here I talk like a good Hegelian. I incorporated these determinations in my development, but these were just moments. In January 2018, I still thought of myself as a pagan, but I had already gone beyond, so to speak. So here it's really when I would develop a special relationship with the Jews. I discovered Novalis, Heidegger, Dostoevsky, Orwell, Melville, and then I bought Le Besoin Impossible in June 2017, and I understood parts of the book in January 2018. So the books grew in wisdom and brilliance with me in a way. And that's when I discovered Apollonian Germ. So here we're in January 2018. I discovered Savitri Devi. I got more interested in the monetary system. And I discovered, thanks to Marie Cachet, that I suffer from a psychological level from limerence, which is obsessive romantic love, attachment for the object that I love, which I associated and still associate with my teenage romance. So if I speak honestly, whoever or whatever I am and whoever or whatever you are, the people that I intend to make this video for, although I know that it will be public, you have helped me understand, discover myself. So yeah, and in the negative traumas I experienced in January 2018, I experienced terror, ontological despair. I was angry against the Jews. I acted cowardly. I discovered Hegel, and my admiration for Hegel would keep intensifying from January 2018 until August 2018. So here's February. I had a very powerful spiritual experience with Stella, while she made a video where she talked about Andrew Jackson and Hitler. So that's when I think I discovered Stella Bell's channel, probably at the end of 2017, but I really became interested in February 2018. And this is the mystical experience that I've talked in some of my videos. Fight Club, it was a mixture of Fight Club, Metal Gear Solid, the unity of Hegel and Marx, Robespierre, Hitler and Zizek, Batman and the Joker, so many ideas condensed in my mind in a brief moment of supernatural understanding that this is the most intense mystical experience that I've had, and it was connected to Stella Bell. And that's when I discovered Hegel in January, I mean already in December, but then in January, and then in February, and I bought a very important book, Logique de la science-fiction, the logic of science fiction, by a French author, and that's when I started to mix Hegel with science fiction, and I became a Hegelian in a way. I became obsessed with Hegel because he was my hero basically. So this is my development. So here, at the end of January 2018, after having experienced what I called absolute reality, and when I was starting to see our spirit in modern songs, movies, etc., I listed the phenomenal appearance of my mind, namely all the books, authors, and processes and paths that I had gone through since the month of July, August 2016. So 1.5 years of development. I started to list all the steps that I had gone through, and I call this the phenomenal appearance of my mind, and I thought about the Phenomenologie des Geistes. And also I discovered that my intellectual path, which was an individual process, but actually also the process of the development of mind and spirit in the Western world. I did not understood this maybe completely, but I identified my own personal development with the structure of the encyclopedia that I was starting to discover, nature, Geist, etc. I became interested. So here we are in the continuity, February 2018, libertarianism. Yeah, I experienced hell again as a mirror this time. So for me, hell is a mirror. Yeah, I had a cosmic trauma. I bought a book by David Icke. I was afraid of technological enslavement. I started to think about the reptilian. So here, I don't know if it happened in a matter of a few days, but in February 2018, I started to lose it completely. And yeah, yeah, these are memories that are still very traumatizing. Yeah. This song played while I was doing wrong actions, cowardly actions in a way, and I was punished. So yeah, this was traumatizing. I started to think about Savitri Devi and the forces of disintegration and death, and I experienced admiration for the scheming of the elites, which I associated the elites with the Jews, and it made me partly give up on anti-Semitism. So I had been, in a way, an anti-Semite more or less consciously for about a year or less than a year, but I already was giving up on anti-Semitism because I understood the elites that I associated with the Jews. So my understanding brought about admiration. So yeah. I started buying the complete works of Hegel in the month of March. because of the previous reason, because Hegel was here, everywhere, if I wanted to make a joke. April, I discovered, thanks to Apollonian Germ, Hegel and the Hermetic Tradition by Glenn Alexander Maggie, and my interpretation of Hegel was tremendously influenced by this interpretation. I read a book about reactionary liberty by Robert Taylor and Batman and the dialectics of restoring order. In April 2018, I began to think consciously and formally like Hegel. I bought Die Bestimmung des Menschen by Fichte. I started to write little writings which were kind of insignificant, but that which I call dialectics, paganism, and pop culture. So in the month of April 2018, I started to develop what would become eventually cultural Hegelianism as a philosophical system or as an ideology. And I used to walk a lot every day while thinking, and I developed many ideas, and I started to think and understand Hegel, whereas I was just starting to buy his books. So yeah, for 6 or 7 months in 2018, I bought step by step all the works of Hegel. And also an event happened in March 2018. I understood the unfolding of spirit, namely I understood that white nationalism was contradictory, that libertarianism was contradictory, so that they had to unite at some moment. And when I understood that, I discovered that a book had just been published by Chase Rachel. So that's a moment when I was kind of satisfied with myself, because I understood the process of spirit. I understood actually that it was attempting to solve contradictions, and I anticipated the writing of this book, not the detailed content, but I understood that it would be a phenomenal appearance. So I understood Hegel basically before reading Hegel. I had my last spiritual experience with Varg, and also an experience with Hermetic Kitten in April 2018. I intended to share my thoughts on YouTube. So in this period, so it's February and March, April, Varg and Hegel and Marie Cachet, because I developed cultural Hegelianism from Marie Cachet's vision of paganism. I developed cultural Hegelianism. At this moment I had admiration for radical Muslims and anger against the white middle class for the situation of the Western world. So I had been angry against Muslim immigrants in the West, and now I partly admired radical Muslims. So this is a part of who I am. I have had admiration for some radical Muslims and anger against the white middle class. Yeah, I was angry against the Marxists also. And now the month of May 2018, I started to discover alchemy, Gnosticism, Hermeticism. The exegesis would become very influential, and I fell in love, in platonic love, with Stella, because I understood some of her ideas, which were so brilliant that I couldn't help but fall in love. On the day of my official birthday, the 16th of May 2018, I was converted to Christianity because I understood that the Jews were in conflict with one another and that they suffered genuinely. So I understood intellectually the suffering of the Jews, which made me give up on anti-Semitism. So my relationship with the Jews, here we are at the beginning of August 2022, but from a chronological and historical perspective of my historical development, I've had 2 moments when I partly gave up on the anti-Semitism that I had started to develop probably in January 2017. 2 moments made me give up on anti-Semitism. That's why I don't know what people will think about my relationship with the Jews when or if they watch this video, but on a transcendental level, I made peace with the Jews when I was converted to Christianity, basically. So yeah. June 2018, I will go until August, and then I bought the books that Stella was interested in about traditional femininity and romanticism, because I wanted I was interested in whatever she was interested in because she was so brilliant, and I was fascinated and in intellectual platonic love. I developed in the month of June cultural Hegelianism with the motto Avril Lavigne, Evola, and Hegel plus the anti-Hegelian philosophers. That's how I summarized. June 2018 is when I discovered Caroline. Caroline, if you somehow watch this, that's when I discovered you, and I can give you an anecdote. I watched a video about romanticism and nationalism for about 15 minutes, and I knew about, after 15 minutes, broadly, that I knew everything about you. Like, not anything in particular, but the whole picture, basically. I understood you. It took me 15 minutes to say, okay, I know what this woman is all about, and I must be honest, I loved you, basically. I did not fall in love. I had fallen in love 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks previously, but I knew that I loved you because I understood you so well. Without knowing you, it was, yeah. So June 2018 is also the month when I realized that Hegel is not just a European thinker. At this moment, chronologically, I identify myself as unconsciously a European, not a European nationalist. I was not involved in politics, but as a European, but also as a Hegelian. And I thought that Hegel was in league with the Europeans for good. I discovered that he was beyond Europe. That's when I discovered the hip-hop artist Prodigy, which had published an album, Hegelian Dialectics. And I understand, but why is there Hegelian dialectics in an Afro-American hip-hop singer? That's when I understood that Hegel is not, strictly speaking, limited to Europe. I also discovered Jean Robin. I discovered Jean. If, Jean, you are watching this somehow, that's when I discovered you. And I heard your story, your conversion to Christianity, the story with your wife, etc. And it made me give up, at least on a transcendental level, my pro-white racial bias. I did not think of myself as racist because I had partly transcended racism already a long time ago, but I was pro-European, so in a way I had racial pride. But listening to Jean Robin made me understand that race is not a proper category to think about to think about the world and to understand. It is useful and even necessary, but it's not a proper moral category. So Jean, if you listen to this somehow, when, I don't know, you are the reason why I ceased to be, at least at this moment, I ceased to be racist in a way. You cured me from racism. But then I fell back again later. But you cured me once, and I know that racism is wrong, and I know this because of you. And I was not racist, I was pro-white, but even a pro-race bias is kind of wrong. That's when I became a Protestant libertarian in a way. I wanted to judge people like Martin Luther King did by the content of their character. So you helped me a great deal, but I did not become anti-white. I still had love for all the people that I met, but I had made peace with the problem of race because I had gone beyond. Here again in June, my love for Stella turned into really a passion, an intellectual passion for Stella. Stella, if you hear this, I was intellectually passionate about you and even obsessed. You were the center of my life. I watched your videos. I was interested in the things you said, and you helped me develop spiritually so much. You were my source of inspiration. You were my intellectual passion, basically. And in passion there is suffering. I said, I elevated myself in love with you. So I was kind of inspired. I discovered I was connected. I had coincidences, synchronicities with you, the music you loved. I started to love everything about you, Stella. If you watch this, I was passionately, intellectually in love with you. And that's why, I have no problem admitting this, my love story when I was a teenager was a passion, but it was a sweet passion. It was a teenage romance. The kind of passion that I developed for Stella many years later was intellectual, but it was a really passion. Like I really was fully in love with you. and also partly with Caroline. I started to buy books about women because I wanted to understand you as a woman, or as a female protagonist, or a female entity, a female person, Stella. And on a conscious level, it is tied with my vices. Between 2011 and 2018, when I fell in love with Stella, I never thought about love. I never thought I would ever love another girl or woman ever again. And I used to watch porn and stuff, so I thought about sex, but I never thought that I would have any love relationship, whether real or platonic or whatever, with any other person, because up until this moment, I was still, either I did not think about my love story as a teenager, or when I did think about love, for me there was only my teenage romance. So that's why I fell in love a second time, one might say, but yeah. I started in the month of July 2018 to study the educational system, with the idea of abolishing it already, so I was in a sort of spiritual quest. I studied Kabbalah and esotericism. I was still ever more connected with Stella, and I realized in the month of July 2018 that Hegel was way too smart to be just a 19th century German thinker, because he had anticipated, I mean, I said to myself, I realized this in July 2018, the world has changed so much in terms of demographics, technology, politics, culture, science, communication, economics, health, etc., over the course of the past 200 years, that it's simply impossible to have thought thoroughly so well that the thought of a 19th century German philosopher might be still applicable to such an enlightening, too brilliant maybe sometimes aspect 200 years later. Like it was so, Hegel became too smart at this moment for me. He was too smart. I still admired him, but yeah, I started to study Hegel and quantum physics, and I began an intellectual struggle against the deep state and secret societies. I was already Stella and Hegel on my mind. So Varg and Marie and Forgotten Roots, they were still vaguely present, but not fully consciously. And Apollonian Germ, I cannot say, probably Dr. Deep State and Apollonian Germ as well, but I was mostly, on my mind, there was Stella, Jean Robin partly, Caroline Emmerich, but mostly Stella and Hegel, basically. And if I had to identify here, I will summarize briefly. So here we are, January 2018. I identify as a Hegelian, partly as a Hermeticist, cultural Hegelian, the writings of Philip K. Dick, a Christian, a cultural Hegelian, a Christian, libertarian, anti-racist. Yeah. My admiration for Hegel was at its peak in July 2018, probably. I elevated myself in love with Stella, and then I fell in love in a way. I started to develop multiple personalities, a spiritual, transcendental personality, and an empirical self, which is more dumb and more shy and more worried and weaker, maybe. I said this already, and in this period, June 2018, I started to judge pretty harshly the leftists, the white leftists, and the Catholics, because I had been converted to Christianity and I wanted to punish the liars. So I experienced, this is one of the worst emotions that I've experienced, but when I experienced this, it was a feeling of self-righteousness. So I kind of enjoyed it, but in a perverse, very negative way. This is one of my darkest aspects. So I had this sadistic will to punish the left, the white leftists and the Catholics, because I thought that spirit was on my side, which was a mistake, but this is what I have done and thought. And that's why at this moment I was not struggling against Muslims or non-whites or Jews or the left, the economic level, whatever. My struggle was spiritual against white liberal leftists and Catholics, in a way. That's what I thought, basically. And then 2018, my God experience, which lasted for about 3 weeks, what I call the Fichte moment. And I will just briefly show the path just the intellectual events or discoveries which has led there. So, official birth, first memories, high school dropout. So this is my intellectual life story. If you need to understand who or what I am, if an other, because I understand myself, but if an other needs to use this information against me, either I am good and I will defeat those who try to hurt me, or I am bad and I deserve to be defeated, but whatever, I feel not confident but at peace with the idea of sharing my most intimate personal and also intellectual and spiritual development, because I don't want to hide anymore, because yeah. So this is the path. In case you hadn't noticed, in blue these are mystical, speculative experiences, spiritual experiences. In green, the most important moments of my intellectual development. So this is what has led me to identify with God in August 2018, and I started to wonder what is Hegel talking about in the phenomenology of spirit. I said to myself, Stella is the eternal woman, the absolute woman, the feminine principle. I questioned myself about the end times, the various world religions, the Jewish Messiah. On the 27th of August 2018, I knew myself to be the whole of reality. And on the 28th of August 2018, a car accident almost killed Stella, but she escaped without a scratch. So Stella, I had intended to make a video where I talk about this before posting this video, or while imagining that if you watch my video, somehow you will have known about this before I need to express this, but that's what happened. So that's why I have the certainty that we are connected, and that you are a part of me, and that we are, for better and for worse, I might say, we are divine, so to speak, because I have adopted what happened on this date, but I always try to remind myself, but the coincidence is so statistically improbable that it's impossible that it might be a coincidence, so that this was a sign sent by the real God to remind myself, probably, not to forget what happened, maybe, I don't know. And you said, I hope that God has plans for me. And I had spent the past 3 months making plans for you. Since I fell in love with you, I had been making plans to communicate my ideas, etc., etc. And I had a weird moment where I identified with Zeus, I discovered Neil Walsh, I thought about the Dalai Lama. This was quite confused, like this experience, basically. It was a little less intense, but when I have really profound divine experiences, things get quite confused. So this is what happened until August 2018. And now I will show the counterpart. So my main influences at this moment were Fichte, Stella, Hegel. And I started to think about Buddhism, to seek the void, the emptiness, the nothingness. And I spontaneously started to think like a German metaphysician. And also, when I was in love with Stella, I changed my behavior. For many years, I had become indifferent to my empirical well-being, but the new love that I was developing, the attraction, the obsession in a way with Stella, made me want to improve myself physically. And that's why I started to take care of my skin problems and and the evils or the negative. I became arrogant when I was spiritually inspired. I was scheming in a way to try to seduce you. Basically, that's what it is. I was consciously scheming. A trauma was that I knew myself to be the cause of all evil. This is a trauma that I have not yet solved. And I rejected responsibility. And I had the will to dump myself down and to forget, because the experience of identifying with God was traumatizing in a way, in a peaceful way, but it was traumatizing nonetheless. So I will just go back up and show the process, the major influences. This is the story that I envision from my perspective. So Rousseau, great writers, conservative leftists. These people have had a profound influence upon me. That's the chronological order. Here we are in January 2018. Here Hegel, Stella, Hegel, the major events, in a way, Caroline, slightly Jean Robin, etc., etc., mostly Stella. And now the perspective of the intellectual currents and the personality traits. So here, this is what I think of myself, but I may be deluding myself, but this is the conscious knowledge, which may be wrong, that I have about myself, and the intellectual currents that I have followed with the chronological timeline: socialism, Marxism, communism, ecology, philosophy, conservative, socialism, etc., etc. Yeah, so this is my intellectual development until my God experience of 4 years ago, and just my evils of which I have become conscious of, or my sins, or the negative trauma, mostly the absence of my father, sense of being worthless, and also outbursts of arrogance, partly coward, partly stupid, partly sexually wicked, angry against people, various groups of people. But I have cured a lot of this anger, but it has existed nonetheless. So this is what I could say for now, and yeah, I will stop there for now. I wanted to slow down my intellectual life at the end of August 2018, and here I will make a pause. I will drink a glass of water that I will try to appreciate, and then I will continue. Even if the video has to be 3 hours long. I want to publish, not to publish immediately, but to make this video so that whenever people get interested in me, because eventually they will have to, they will know my process from my perspective. And if I'm deluding myself, the real God will correct me, and others will correct me and give me their perspective. But this is my perspective as I wrote this a few days ago. Okay, so I will take a pause. Okay, I continue. So here's what happened in my intellectual life after my God experience, namely the conscious certainty of being the whole of reality. In September 2018, I wanted to slow down my intellectual life. I looked at the news. Maybe it was January 2019, but at some moment I looked at the news and I looked at the important world historical figures, and I asked myself, am I them? What does it mean? They exist in my reality? It was not very clear. But I started to ask myself all sorts of questions. I tried to solve my skin problems. I don't know if I said it, but the reason why I live trapped in my apartment is because I had skin problems, mostly. And I started to take care of my empirical self, my diet. I started to do some sport, to implement some personal discipline. So I behaved like a young right-wing wannabe alt-righter, whatever. I had just identified with God, and a couple of weeks after, I started to become a sportsman. Basically, there's nothing wrong with being a sportsman, but I had just a very high sense of responsibility, but that I eluded this sense of responsibility, and I retreated into my most empirical, singular existence, and my obsession for Stella intensified. I was in love, passionately, intellectually in love, obsessed in a sense of passionate attraction for Stella, fascination, admiration, no, but fascination. I mean, admiration, yes, but it was in ordinary sense. But usually these are men that I admire, but I loved you, Stella, passionately, intellectually. I was mesmerized, hypnotized by your intelligence, basically, and your character, your personality, your sense of humor, but during these months, from May to August, I tried to detach your, what I call the transcendental self, or your higher self, from your empirical self, the eternal woman in you, from the ordinary empirical American teenage girl. But from this moment on, September, I considered you as an empirical person, and that's why I wrote, I fell in love with you. I had elevated myself, that's the illusion that I had, and now I fell. I was falling to basically a love story for you. I was falling in love with you as an empirical person. I consciously planned to go to the United States of America to meet you, Stella, and I wanted to seduce you. Let us laugh at myself while we can. This is a serious mistake, as serious as it can get. But I didn't understand what the whole of reality, being the whole of reality, meant. So I still experienced myself as a simple individual, and I wanted to talk with you in private. And I knew that in order for this to occur, I had to, because I had so many questions, and I wanted to give you my perspective. I expected you to give me your perspective, that we could share in a romantic and peaceful. I thought that maybe you would love me, but whatever. I wanted to become worthy, empirically worthy of you, Stella. Men shouldn't say that, because if you say to a woman, I'm not worthy of you, she thinks that you adopt yourself. So if you love her and you adopt yourself, you think that you adopt her. So I know about the female psyche, precisely because, thanks to or because of you, Stella. I know a lot about the female psyche. But I wanted to improve myself empirically, to seduce you, because I loved you, and I thought, I will say the truth, I thought that you and I would spend good moments together for a few months, even maybe a couple of years, I said, and then that we would fix all the world's problems, and that we would bring about heaven on earth, or whatever people call heaven. We would work together to bring the best, and but I wanted a love relationship, a love story with you, Stella, because you were so attractive. Yeah. And I studied Kant and Hegel every day. So I generally put discipline, order in my personal life at all levels. And I tried, that's when my intellectual sickness or disease began. I tried to imitate Hegel, and I rejected almost all my personal experience. I consider this to be worthless, because the writings of Hegel were so great that I said to myself, all that I have thought, said, is worthless in comparison. So I gave up on my personal experience. My obsession for Stella intensified. I wrote in the present, but it intensified. I became interested in your empirical life, and the main influence were Hegel, Kant, and Stella every day. I started to look at the world and wonder, because I studied logic, the relationship between the logic of essence and the modern political life of the West, with categories such as identity, difference, diversity, equality, inequality, etc., etc. I went to a doctor to have my skin problems cleared and fixed. He took a picture of me, and I saw myself on this picture, and I realized that I had been an egotistical monster because of my knowledge. And I wondered, is this the original sin? Have I sinned? Have I created what the Christians call Lucifer? Because I retreated into my singular self. This is the story that is told by Jakob Böhme. I had again a vision of hell as a mirror, so that was my third experience of intellectual hell. I had kind of a mental breakdown. I looked at the news. I realized that people were pretty pissed off in France, but yeah. So December 2018 was when I really had a difficult, troubled time, and I kind of forgot about you, Stella, because I said to myself, okay, I've just done something seriously wrong. Yeah. So I started to become a Christian fundamentalist. My vices were narcissism, egotism, selfishness. In January 2019, I knew, because of what I wrote, I read in Hegel, that I had to and will have to, I speak here the month of August, that I will have to go to the place that humans call hell, but it will not just be an intellectual experience. So I know myself to be doomed since January 2019, and here I can explain. One of the reasons why I forgot maybe is that people say the truth is good and deception is bad, which of course it is, but if the truth is that one has to go to hell, maybe people would like to forget, you know. That's not what consciously happened, but I know, understand why to say that truth is good, deception is bad. Of course it is, but deception can also sometimes be appeasing, because if the truth, I don't know what the full truth is, but just to take a simple example, people who suffer from terminal cancer disease, sometimes they would like to be given a little bit of hope. Eventually, they have to be told the truth, but I did not consciously lie to myself, but I just can imagine that it's very difficult to live daily with this idea because it ruins your experience of life, basically. So, yeah, but I have come to accept, at least theoretically. And I added this, we are the 7th, I had added this a couple of days ago. So here, chronologically, it was January 2019, and here are the reflections that I wrote 3.5 years later. If people somehow study my psyche someday, the certainty that whatever I do, I will suffer, it impacts my psyche. I try to act, to play the courage of hopelessness card, but I can anticipate very well, but at some moments I will say, okay, if I really have to suffer a great deal, I will no longer be try to be the nice, enlightening person. I will say, okay, I will suffer a lot, and I want others to suffer with me because I'm terrified and etc. I will try not to, but I can anticipate. But if I can anticipate, maybe it can prevent the trick or the trap from occurring. But this is what I thought and what I've been thinking. Maybe I will try to do good, speaking the truth, being honest, shedding light, making jokes as long as I can, but there might be a moment where I might genuinely experience profound despair and become very negative for this reason. I hope that it's not just a vicious circle, but in a sense, yeah, that's why I might be, or I might be dangerous. I don't want, and this is the truth, I don't want to send anyone to hell. Not me either. Why would I want to do that? But actually, I know this, I want to punish myself for all the horrors of the world, and I know that I deserve to be punished for my sins. So in a way, I don't want to send anyone to hell, but actually I want to send myself, which frightens me and terrorizes me, and this terror and this future pain that I will experience makes me want to punish others, because I suffer, which leads me back to the idea that whatever I do, which is a vicious circle, and this drives me insane. I just want to feel good about myself. I just want to feel good about myself for God's sake. If the idea that what humans call the devil will go to hell, if it might appease humans and make them feel better and find peace with God, well, but yeah, this is my psyche. Yeah, so right now I'm in a positive mood of sharing light, speaking the truth, trying to be as honest as I can, trying to be reassuring, but I will try to be stable as long as I can. But this knowledge is whatever. In January 2019, I discovered an Afro-American spiritual teacher, David Thomas, as his empirical name goes, and who was talking to the camera, and he said at some moment, I am your mirror, you are God, I am your reflection, whatever. So it was a weird experience. This was, I experienced with the people who are supposed to watch this video, Stella, Varg, Marie, etc. I experienced one-sided infinity, namely I recognized my spiritual self in you, and here was the reverse, namely someone who experienced one-sided infinity without knowing me. So he was talking to the random audience, but actually he was, so that was really weird. And he taught me a lot, this person. I mean, I never talked to him, but yeah. And I remember he said somewhere, I'm Phil Jackson, who do you want to be, Kobe or Jordan? Yeah, he said that, so yeah. I started in February 2019 after the knowledge that I knew that I was doomed basically to translate every sentence, every word, every thought into a logical category. So I developed logical fanaticism. Yeah, I thought about speculative logic and identity, unity, indifference, etc., etc. I looked at the news. There was the Christchurch massacre. I started to have a nightmarish vision related to Jakob Böhme, and I realized, okay, I am responsible for this. I have to share my knowledge, which I had failed to do between August and March. I had failed to share my knowledge. So I tried to communicate with my spiritual family. I sent an email with all my writings, I think, or most of my writings, and I tried to bring about the apocalypse by revealing all my writings, which in my view contained the proof of the existence of God, namely the story which had led me to identifying with God. So I was in a very schizophrenic view, and also I had been talking, here is some of the most personal information that I can share. I had been talking for probably 3 years with a member of my biological family, and so I had said everything, not consciously, but I was talking daily about my intellectual development over this period, and I realized at this moment that everything that I had said had been misunderstood completely. And that's when I developed some sort of ultra misogyny, in the sense that I realized that women do not understand philosophy, basically. So I had been talking with someone very close to me, empirically, psychologically, biologically, etc. And I had not been able to communicate everything. So I had been talking with someone while talking alone, basically. So yeah, that's yeah, so I have been warned, so I will try not to make the same mistake again. That's why I've become very skeptical about women. I do not resent women. I mean, when I'm honest, I do not resent, because I know that they are not supposed to be like men, but I just realized that talking with a woman and talking with a man on a metaphysical level are different experiences. That women sometimes listen to you talk out of politeness or kindness or whatever, but when important topics are being discussed, I realized that I would rather talk to an empirical man, but yeah. So there was a misunderstanding related to what I just said. I found myself in a mental asylum. I had the opportunity to talk with a psychiatrist. So I was in this mood, and I found myself here. I talked with a psychiatrist. Here is going to be really weird what happened, but I speak the truth. And I was my mind was filled with German philosophers, and I thought, do I really have to explain to her that Sigmund Freud is not really German? He speaks German, but yeah, that's, yeah. If somehow, someday, Zizek watches this video, because eventually, maybe he will, I don't know. So I took a Christian leap of faith, literally. I jumped out of a building to break my back, inspired by Nietzsche, and by my teenage romance. So I mutilated myself in what could be called an accident of the substance in order to share my writings, because I wanted to bring attention to my writings, because I believed that the burden was very heavy and that I was responsible for all the wrongs of the world, and I wanted to get rid of the burden. Here are a few anecdotes. This is what I am, this is what happened. Basically, I tried to appease the suffering. I asked to someone while lying on a hospital, a medical bed, before being operated on, I might say, if you had to, I talked to a nurse, I think, if you had to rate God, if you had to judge him, which grade or which rating would you give him? 5 out of 10. That seems fair, it could be worse. Yeah, so yeah. These are notes for myself that I wrote a couple of days ago. So I screamed, I am Hegel's negative, etc. while I was lying on the ground screaming in pain. And I realized later that the doctors and the nurses do not know about Hegel or about German metaphysics or the phenomenology of spirit. So I realized, I hadn't realized this then, but I realized this only recently, that I constantly overestimate on an intellectual level people with a degree. Because I suffer from a lack of self-recognition, or a lack of recognition, social recognition. So I constantly believe that people who went to college or university, they are super smart, which they are in their field of expertise, but they do not know everything about every topic. I don't either, but I expected doctors unconsciously to know about Hegel. So I expected that after having taken my leap of faith and just saying I am the negative, they would understand immediately. Actually, they didn't. When I woke up in bed, in hospital, I was in a state of shock mentally, because of the drugs probably, and the anesthesia, etc. And I heard the doctor say that they had read some of the writings that I had been attempting to share, and they talked about a megalomaniac delirium, probably. And I found myself surrounded by people for the first time in 10 years. This is important and I now know that whatever I am important. So we were in April 2019, since May or April or May 2009. So for 10 years, I had almost never gone outside, and I had never been surrounded by people. So there happened a major cognitive dissonance, as they call this, occurred, namely after having traveled all this path in a matter of 3 years. All the ideology, the authors, and here are only the major authors. Actually, there are dozens of authors. After having incorporated all this knowledge in my mind, I found myself surrounded by people who are ordinary people. So there was a dissonance, yeah. And I realized It's not only later that I realized it, but that I had traveled way too fast intellectually. So yeah. This is the rest of the year 2019. I was in hospital until December for re-education after having broken my back. I tried to communicate with the Hyperboreans, and I started this channel, Cultural Hegelianism. I tried mostly to communicate with Hyperborean reflections and Caroline Emmerich. I discovered him at this moment, and I discovered that he had spiritual experiences that I understood, but that he did not understand. I discovered, I think, Matthew Siegel, and I tried to communicate with him. I plunged myself in Hegel again, and now on this path, I became a German metaphysician with a little bit of Hinduism, traditionalism. In my trauma, I tried to be honest. This is correlated with the will to bring about the apocalypse. I try to be honest. I realize that I am partly masochistic, that I suffer from cognitive dissonance. Oh, these are not the sins, these are the psychological traits. The sins, I betrayed and manipulated the member of my family in order to publish my videos, because I thought that it was really important. So I wanted my videos to be published because I felt that I had to get rid of the burden and to help others in a way, and to help myself, and I wanted to be punished. Basically, I wanted to confess and to be punished, to say I am the negative, I am responsible for all the wrongs, all the ills, all the evils. Please punish me so that I can find peace. That's what I thought. This is the state of mind that I found myself in. Okay, so this is the story of the year 2019. And then 2020, at the end of 2019, after having tried to communicate and having lived in the mind of Hegel for many months, I wrote, I fell asleep, in a sense that I gave up on my knowledge. I stopped my intellectual development, namely all these steps with what happened. The knowledge of being the whole of reality seemed completely ludicrous, so I gave up. Like after many months of trying to communicate fruitlessly, I said, okay, I have traveled too fast, too far, and maybe I lost myself, and maybe all these spiritual experiences that I thought I had were just psychological delusion. So I regressed back to a pre-spiritual level, which would be before my first my first mystical experience. So it would be here, August 2017. So go back to race realism and the study of intelligence, basically, and sociobiology, basically. So I gave up on the spiritual aspect because I thought I had mistaken myself. I had made errors, basically, and in a way I betrayed God, in this sense, by renouncing my highest self, so to speak. I had already betrayed God once, and now it was the second time. But I still feel less guilt for this than for the previous, because I had really reached the end of a process which seemed to lead nowhere. Like, I was reading Evola and Hegel every day, but I didn't understand anything. I was disconnected from whatever. So 2020, I tried to return into society and become a normal citizen. So I adopted an ordinary consciousness. I became a normie, as they sometimes call this. I wanted to become a productive member of society. I resumed my study at a high school level. I wanted to study accountancy, to find a place within society, to be accepted. I forgot all the ideas about spirit, the spirit of Odin, Savitri Devi, Hegel, traditionalism. I forgot all this, and I really fell consciously or unconsciously to a level of ordinary consciousness. I started to play video games again, to watch, not to watch football, but to partly be interested in ordinary entertainment. I bought much less books, but I still kept buying books. I read a lot less. and I unconsciously tried to refute Hegel and religion. I realized that Hegel had destroyed my empirical life, but I never resented him really, because a part of me still loved him and still do whatever, because yeah. And then I started the good aspect of my psyche was simply that I wanted, I mean, it's not good versus bad, it's my psychological functioning versus the sins, wrongs, and traumas that I've experienced consciously and that I am capable of talking about. I wanted to be socially accepted. This is the story that I consciously told myself. And then my loss of spirituality, my renunciation of spirituality led me to become immature again. I started to watch porn again. I started to smoke cigarettes. I became exploitative and parasitical. And I was tormented by remorse or guilt, I don't know, but I knew that I discovered that some of my videos that I published in the year 2019 on this channel had been preserved by someone, and they were still on the internet, alt censored. So I refused to accept my past as partly having been a white nationalist, my story of self-mutilation and my delirium. So I was afraid. I did not accept my past. I was tormented. And but I still listened to, I did not identify as a white nationalist, but I still listened to white nationalist talks on the internet, which is a sign of hypocrisy and cowardice, because I was not willing to talk to anyone. I mean, I didn't talk to anyone either, but I felt as a shame. My past was a source of embarrassment and shame, my political past. Political, I never did politics, but my ideological. So there was another contradiction. So these are some of the vices or flaws or sins that I had. I read a lot less, but I still was interested. So here, it's the year 2020. So as you can see, it was a lot shorter on an intellectual level, a lot less stimulating, but on an intellectual level. But at the same time, if I had never rested, maybe I would have, I don't know, but yeah. So I still studied a little right-wing politics, transhumanism, libertarian economics, the natural sciences. 2021, I got a high school diploma with excellent grades. I started training to become an accountant. So in order to become a productive member of society, this is the story that I followed and that I told myself. I made an IQ test in September 2021, so a year ago, basically 11 months ago. And I realized that I had a very high IQ, the 98th percentile in France, which is a country where the average IQ is higher than in most countries on Earth. And I have a very, very high IQ in a country with a relatively or even already very high IQ in comparison with most other people, and an even higher IQ in verbal intelligence. So it was a shock to realize that actually I am very smart on an empirical level. I did not expect that I would be that smart. So yeah. In the year 2020, so 2020, and for 1.5 years, I think I do not consciously remember having read Hegel, or not intensely at least, maybe browsing through a few times here and there to try to convince myself that I had gone through a complete delirium. But it's only towards the end of 2021, so less than a year ago, that I reread Hegel again. Simply, I wanted to understand, but how could I have been deluded by such a system? And I wanted to study logic independently of the speculative aspect. So I started to reread Hegel, and I started to realize that some of the things he said were intelligible because I had grown intellectually. Although I had slowed down the process, I had grown intellectually nonetheless. So I understood Hegel better. So in this period, I was in my training program, so I had no leisures almost. Not to read at least. And December 2021, I had leisure again, a little bit of leisure, and I used this as an opportunity to read and study more intensely. So I became a fanatical knowledge collector, one might say, again, in December. I studied economics, Darwinism, the natural sciences, evolutionary psychology, history, in more depth in a way. I was already self-taught in these topics, but here I studied more thoroughly. And I consciously, maybe for the first time, I consciously tried to refute Hegel. That's why I started buying the works of... so I was still in a state of ordinary consciousness, but I consciously said, okay, Hegel played a trick on me, which has led me to being disabled, having partly ruined my life. So I tried to consciously refute him. I started to buy the Anglo-Saxon philosophers and partly read their books, the analytical philosopher, Wittgenstein, etc., symbolic logic. So I attempted to refute Hegel. Again, at the beginning of 2022, so 7 months ago, basically. I studied psychopathology, psychiatry, schizophrenia to convince myself that I really had a mental delirium, that it has nothing to do with religion or Hegel or philosophy, but it only reinforced and strengthened my belief that Hegel was right. So here, February 2022, I was studying mathematics, Christianity and neurobiology. I identified as a Christian without really believing. It was more of a social cloth, one might say. Like most people in European country, they say they are Christians, but actually it's just they pretend. And I don't blame them, precisely because I did the same thing. But I wanted to think of myself as being a hard-working, respectable member of society, and associated this idea with the idea of Protestantism. So I wanted to become a good Christian in the ordinary consciousness sense of the word, namely a Protestant work ethic, going to church and seeking redemption for the sins that I thought were my sins, namely my past, my political past, and my delirium, basically. I wanted to redeem my shame and my guilt, and also the psychological characteristic of 2021. So I realized that I was very smart. I had ordinary conversation with regular people, normal people again. I was feeling embarrassed. Yeah, the fact of having conversation, either I feel embarrassed by the fact that I talk to people, or sometimes I felt annoyed because they didn't seem to be interested. So there was the mixture too, but mostly I just found myself in a situation where after more than 10 years of a few conversations with family members or the doctors and nurses in hospital or etc., I was not in the real world, so to speak. So I discovered the human condition in the aspect of having conversations with other people. Yeah. And I started to develop the idea before my reawakening that I would want to stand for my ideas. Namely, I was starting to develop a view in which I said, for the rest of my life, I will try not to become racist, because I was not. I mean, I was unconsciously, but I did not hate non-whites, but I was a race realist, namely, and I was starting to adopt the belief that I would have to be willing to talk to others about race, realism, and IQ just to make reality intelligible. So this may be a good aspect. Namely, I had the conscious will to stand by, not by some of my former political views, but some of my still present scientific views, because racism is a sin, but race realism is just epistemology. So yeah. So I went, I thought about a lecture that I had to do for my training as an accountant, and I wanted to give a lecture on nothing, and I started to think philosophically about nothing. Not think about nothing, but the process of nothingness, basically. and that gave me the will to study culture. That I did not belong with accountants, but with culture, basically. I was at home when I could speak and talk and read about culture, which is the life of spirit, basically, in its highest form. I went to church twice, and I realized I had never been to church as an adult or even as a child. I realized that I understood the sermons of the pastoress better than her, in spite of my complete lack of religious knowledge, formal, but because of my philosophical understanding, I understand what she was talking about. So I went to church twice, and I was converted again to Christianity. The fact that I had to be converted twice is the proof that after my first conversion, which, if you have followed, was on the 16th of May 2018, I made a serious mistake. I lost my faith, and I betrayed, in a way, God. So that's one of the sins that I will have to live with, and eventually to redeem, if it can be redeemed. But yeah, I wrote this a couple of days ago when I was in a mood to make jokes. But that's me. That's what I think, how I write when I am just me. So I stand by what I wrote, whatever happens, because yeah. And at the end of February, I received a piece of advice that I asked for to a person that might be considered a father figure, and he said, the key to achieve success is to share one's knowledge with one's associates. And then I awakened. So my thought about culture, going to church, the situation in Ukraine, my past experience, plus this piece of advice, I awoke in a way at the end of February, and I said to myself, I have to stop the conflict in Ukraine, because at some fundamental level I am the whole of reality, so it's my conflict in a sense. So that's why I awoke, and I realized that I was schizophrenic, that God had been manipulating me because he used my love and my passion for the white race to awaken me, because I knew, okay, there is a war between white people. I want this to stop. I don't want white people to hurt one another, because I love them. But then that's complicated. That's complicated. But I know, I understood. If, and this is maybe horrifying to say, but I will be honest. If an African country had invaded its neighbor, maybe I would not have awakened. But then I knew, okay, white Russians will fight against white Ukrainians, and I don't want that to happen. Although, obviously, at some level, I have to want this to happen because it happens. But on a conscious level, I wanted to stop this, and that's why I awoke and I started my YouTube channel again. And from now on, it will go faster, because if you want to know my development from then on, you can just watch my videos. I suppressed one video at the very beginning, probably end of February or the early days of March. But otherwise, I haven't suppressed any video. I have published, I think, except when I do tests, but probably 97% of my videos, there's just a few videos that I keep because I think it's not the proper time to publish them, but otherwise, yeah. And what I have been doing for the past 5 months, I study Hegel every day, very intensely. I tried to talk to Apollonian Germ, but I have failed. He hasn't watched my videos. I listen to Apollonian Germ and Caroline Emmerich. I have listened to them almost every day. That's why I understand their mind. I understand your mind. If one of you is watching, I understand you so well, because I have spent many months listening to you. I've started to develop a personal relationship with God, which had never happened before. I started to have conversations with ordinary people again. I have grown more independent and mature on an intellectual and ethical level. I've experienced, I talk about this in my video. I discovered Ava Max and Billie Eilish, which have expressed in their songs the mood shift that I've experienced. So these were great discoveries. They are amazing, I believe. Yeah, I mean, there are dark aspects that I might not like, but from a purely artistic standpoint, this is simply amazing. I've been questioning every day. So this is what I've done almost every day for the past 5 months. The relationship between my empirical self and my highest self, or my transcendental self, as I call this. I've used various methods to try to communicate. I've worked harder and harder to make my intellectual content more rigorous. I still failed. I've become smarter and smarter. I've studied psychoanalysis, which made me darker because I've understood some, maybe wiser. I've had self-revelations of all sorts about the meaning of my existence, about some of my most embarrassing aspects, some of my fears, some of my wickedness. So I have revealed myself to myself in lots of ways over the past 5 months. I've really, what has happened and still is happening as long as I live, I might say, I've experienced a tremendous intellectual development over the past 5 months. And I have asked myself for the past few months, the more smarter I became, the more questions I asked, like, but do the people who talk in public, do they, I will not comment, you can read, but this is the kind of question that I asked myself. I wrote this a couple of days ago. How could being be refuted? Nothing can refute being. Precisely nothing can refute being, but being is nothing, and nothing is because nothing is nothing, so nothing is being because being is nothing. So being is the refutation of itself, that's called dialectics, and nothing is also the refutation of itself, that's dialectics again. This is the kind of things that I can write in 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, but it makes a lot of sense to me. But this is the kind of, it seems like insanity, but actually it's logic. So yeah, I have had conversation with ordinary people about the importance of the categories. And yeah, I've stumbled upon this video. Also, I started to reread my old writings, and I found they were not as bad as I thought they would be. In my sins and my characteristics, so in February, before my awakening, I wanted to adopt the Protestant work ethic, which I have over the past few months. I've discovered that I'm very stubborn, which can be a sin or a vice. I've discovered that I have a good sense of humor sometimes. I have become more responsible. I have discovered that there is aspect of sexual perversion in me, in my subconscious, that I have partly explored. There is perversion. I cannot deny this. On a less negative aspect, there is simply lust. I discovered this a couple of months ago, that an aspect of me is that I experience sexual desire. There is unhealthy and healthy, but sexual desire, in my view, could be seen as unhealthy in itself. But this is a very important aspect of me, namely that, I mean, it seems to be an ordinary human experience, but actually it maybe comes from me, namely that I suffer from being driven by desire on a sexual level. Every human after in his teenage years and until in old age, during his adult life and his mature teenage and adult life, experiences this. But if I am who or what I think I am, this may come from me. So I just realized this, and also I've encountered a great intellectual development. I've becoming calmer and more stable while still having violent outbursts, but overall I'm more stable. with the possibility that I might experience violent mood shifts, but I can calm myself more rapidly. I control my emotions better when they are not very intense. I control them better, so I have improved in my way to behave and in my intellectual development. And also I realize if the world really is the projection of my mind, as I think it is, I guess that although I cannot explain how it works, I guess that I do suffer at some level from all the sins found in human beings. So that's why, yeah. And now I will conclude. The more I become smarter, the more I understand geopolitics, because I understand dialectics. I understood that it was a controlled opposition orchestrated by the elites. Apollonian Germ knows this at some level. That's why I've been trying to communicate. And I've asking the question, but what do the people who are in charge or who think that they are in charge, what do they know about reality, basically? Because up until a few days ago, I asked myself this kind of question. I thought of myself as being dumb. Actually, I got smarter and smarter. I'm still partly dumb, but I have come to realize that there are many people in the world who do not have a clue of what they are doing, because I experienced myself as being God and I had no clue of who I was and what I was doing. And it has taken me more than 4.5 years of intense intellectual development with phases of more or less intense activity to finally come to the realization that I am ignorant on many topics and even flawed intellectually and other aspects, but I understand the world more than the people who are officially in charge. That's why I've been trying to communicate with Apollonian Germ. I understand why I failed. So the smarter I become, the more bitter, but also the more wise I believe. He seems, yeah. I wrote this a couple of days ago. We are the 7th of August. I failed to communicate. Here's a new method. I will try to be me. That's what I did on the 29th of July. I would just be me, and I will not try to be just simply a commentator of Hegel. So that's when I understood that Hegel and Nietzsche were in some sort of a partnership to force me to be me, become who you are. And I understood the algorithm that my video about I will now just be me will succeed because of the algorithm eventually. So I just need to make one successful video, hopefully more, but just one will be sufficient for the people to get interested in my content. And I understood this. I had a discussion with another member of my biological family. I speak in logical categories to try to express the fruits of the work that I've been producing over the past 5 months. So I now can speak, if I want to, in logical categories. So I say something, not something as a word, but in logical categories in a way. The other person tries to refute what I've just said and says something else, expressed in images, metaphors, ordinary language, which actually this something else confirms what I had said just before, because I understand at a very high level that something and something else are identical. So I found myself in a situation where I said something, not something, the logical category, but actually it was the presentation of the concept in its abstract form. The person with whom I'm talking to says, no, I disagree, whatever. She reformulates, and her reformulation validates what I said 30 seconds prior. And I understand that this is a dialectical process, which I try to remain calm, because I understand that the person talking is not herself in a way, it's the dialectics talking through the person. Yeah, so here's the algorithm. And when this happens, it has happened twice in my life with 2 different persons each time. I can see the dialectics in a way, speaking through the other person without the other person being aware that she or he, but it was women, but it could be men as well, that they are driven by logical determinism. The first time it happened, it was in August 2018. I almost became insane because it was frightening. Now, with more maturity, when I understand when this happens, I try to calm down and to take a deep breath and to remain calm, but it's very difficult. That's why diversity might be our strength at some level, because when you are confronted by any other who you recognize as a logical program, it drives you insane, basically. I did not become insane, and I will try not to, but yeah. So I said to myself, from now on, I will just improvise. I have to make videos which are successful. I classify my last documents, which I have been doing. I share my personal documents. I've shared the formal structure. I still have personal documents to share. And tomorrow or the day after or in the coming days or whenever, I will simply start making videos where I improvise to try to share my truth. That's the decision that I have taken. I still need to sleep at least 4 hours per night, but actually 6 hours would be better, so I cannot work 24 hours a day. This is physiologically impossible, so I take the decision to sleep at least 6 hours per day, so to work at least 16 or 17 hours a day, but I need 1 hour or 2 hours for ordinary handling of life, like eating, resting a little bit, and sleeping, and hygiene, etc. But otherwise, I know what I have to do. But yeah. And I wrote something for the real God. I will not read aloud what I wrote. I wrote this a couple of days ago. I am still genuinely lost, but I have improved intellectually. Here's what I wrote a couple of days ago. This is what I said. Okay, and now the perspective. Yes, so this is maybe the becoming wirklich eventually with a video that I might publish tomorrow. I don't know, because I still need now to sleep for at least 6 hours, then to work again to publish some documents, and then to work to produce at least the one video, or the 2 or the 3 videos that hopefully will make this channel successful and will force people out of interest or I don't know what to eventually stumble upon my videos. So this is what I have been experiencing over the past 5 months, and yeah. So this is. I will not show. I will briefly show the whole process. It's been more than 2 hours. So all I know about me at this moment in time. So yeah. All I know about me chronologically. I may be deluding myself. This is what I think I know, but I've had many vices that I've tried to cure throughout my life, consciously or unconsciously. There are several others, vices probably, and sins, but these are those that I am aware of. And the others, I will either reveal them as they unfold or become aware of them if I am not yet aware. Yeah. So this is my psyche as I envision this, and now I will let others, as long as I have a conscious psyche, I will let others judge me for what I have done, have said, will do as long as I can act, or will say as long as I can speak. And here, yeah, the perspective, hopefully, yeah. So I haven't worked consciously a very long time about this document. It took me a few hours, but so that's why there may be things that I've forgotten, or I may delude myself, but I just want to give the broad view. So here it's German idealism. Yeah. So basically, I have no news of Stella. I haven't had news of Stella for the past 3 years. I haven't watched the videos of Marie, Cachet, or Varg, or even Forgotten Roots, because they do no longer publish videos. I've watched some older videos from them, but yeah. I haven't had the time to study the video of Jean, because I've been focusing on Apollonian drum. Yeah, so this is my God experience. And I know, Stella, that eventually you will have to watch at least some of my videos, because we are spiritually connected for a reason that I do not yet understand, which is beyond me, maybe. But yeah, so here's my intellectual story as I envision this. As of now, we are the 7th of August 2022, so it has been 4 years. It was during the whole month of August 2018. 4 years I had my God experience, and I knew myself to be the whole of reality, which brings about an enormous amount of question. But I think that I have reached, over the past few months and especially few weeks, I have reached a point where I have to actualize what I think is my truth on an intellectual level, namely cultural Hegelianism. I believe, as of now, I believe that I still have a few documents to publish, work a little on a minimum of structure for my video, and then to improvise and to actualize cultural Hegelianism as maybe it was supposed to be since the beginning. By simply, I will register and record myself, not register, record myself as I am in my everyday life when I'm not in front of the camera, with all my aspects. And I will try to make my videos famous, to try to prevent or to diminish, or to preserve what can be preserved, and to prevent conflict, unnecessary conflict, because I think that there might be conflicts, but there might be on a conscious spiritual level and not on a geopolitical level. So I don't know what's going to happen. I will try to do what I think is right, and what I thought was right before publishing this video was to share all the personal information that I think I possess about me. I'm not gonna detail all the sometimes the twisted and even sick ideas which briefly pop into my mind, but I have done on this aspect, I have done what I think is correct given the circumstances. But I wish I could been able to talk with you, the person on the list that I published, to talk with you first, privately, preferably, peacefully, and I will just conclude here because I'm really tired. I've been making videos here for the past maybe 5 hours, I don't know. I don't know if I will ever talk. I mean, I am talking to you indirectly, but to talk with Stella or Apollonian Germ or Hyperborean Reflections or Caroline or Forgotten Roots or Varg or Marie or Jean, I don't know if... I think that eventually you will have to watch some of my videos, but where will I be? How, in what state of mind will I be? Will we meet one another in a different realm as souls or spirits? Will we experience ourselves as being different from one another? Is there life after death? Will we live there? Am I you completely? Am I just a part of you? Are you a part of my spirit? I don't know. But I have loved you in a way, and admired you, mostly the men, but also some of the women, and loved you genuinely. I mean, I loved you, but I don't know if it's genuine in a sense that, can you love a person that you have never talked to, never met, never been into contact with, who doesn't even know empirically that you exist? Can you call this love? That's a very profound question, and that's why I know that the person that I've loved the most is my teenage romance, because it was empirical love with all its flaws and inadequacies. But I could talk to this person and be with her. And Stella, I will talk about you. Of course, I'm very attracted by what you are, because I know that you are the embodiment of a metaphysical principle in a way. So I am very attracted by you, and I hadn't thought about you consciously for many years, but I just stumbled upon one of your former videos, which is still available on the internet, and just listening to you laugh, you got me in love again, as Dua Lipa said in one of her songs. Just hearing you laugh and see you joyful, and you got me again, because and rereading the things that I wrote, I reread some of the quotes that I had gathered from your videos, Stella, of 2018, and just reading your words, I was seduced again, because you are just too smart. Not too smart in a good sense, you are really smart. You have a great sense of humor, and I cannot help but, that's why it's very complicated, because I don't know really what you are. Are you a part of me? The best part, maybe? I don't know. But I have just reached a point of intellectual exhaustion, and I'm still willing to struggle intellectually as long as it has to be, but I'm not tired of thinking and trying to resolve intellectual problems, but I'm tired of I just have to share the knowledge that I have gathered on my own. Not here, this is a document which is my own production in a way. I did this in I don't know, one afternoon, maybe, I don't remember exactly, but sharing what I have in my mind, in my brain, maybe with others. But my personal experience has led me to believe that I had nothing interesting to say, but actually it's not because it's not interesting, it's simply because it's way too complex, so I have to find a proper balance, and that's what I will try to do as long as I can speak publicly, peacefully, more or less, or even speak at all. But yeah, so you know, in broad outline, my intellectual story, some of the most important determinations of my psychological, psychic self as I understand this. My subconscious, it's really dark. Yeah, and yeah, that's what I had to say. And I wanted really to give a lecture where I could share the speculative knowledge with you, the people listed, and that we could, if we had to argue with one another, because we are maybe we are so close, that's why we have to argue, because it's logically determined. But at least we would be able to argue philosophically. But I know that it's not possible, because I understand the process. So the next best thing I can do is to share all I know about myself. If you have to use this to enlighten me for the better, that's good. And to enlighten me because I become dark, or maybe I will enlighten you because maybe you will become dark. I don't know. Maybe I'm not just the bad guy. Maybe I have good aspects. And if actually I know that I have. So maybe it's partly me enlightening you. I don't know. But I understand. I try to be honest, and I will, as long as I publish video, I will keep talking to some of you. Mostly Stella, Apollon and Jerome, Caroline, Hyperboreans, because I know you so well, because I've spent many months of my life taking notes by watching your videos, and I understand you, and in a sense a part of me loves you intensely because I understand you so well, and you have very interesting things to say, and I don't know if we will ever talk, if we will talk peacefully, if we will be friends, if we will meet in another realm. Where I will be if or when you do stumble upon my video, I don't know. But I have decided to take risks for the better, hopefully knowing that whatever I do, there has a part of failure, I guess. So yeah. I will stop the video now, and I will sleep a while because I'm really exhausted, and as the moment when I wake up, I will keep registering, recording the document that I have to share, and then I focus all my strength, moral and intellectual, onto the purpose of publishing videos which might make this channel successful, in order to appease all the problems and to eventually at some moment to find peace everywhere, in my mind, in my relationship with others, in the world. I just want to be at peace. That's the final purpose. I already said this. To be at peace and to preserve the most noble aspects of existence, and which are also aspects of the human soul. And these they have to be preserved. But once this knowledge is acquired, the next step is really to, okay, we have to find peace. I have to find peace, and an absolute knowing may be the cause of all conflicts, but I don't know if it can bring peace. But I'm on a quest to acquire absolute knowing, because in a state of the knowledge of the absolute, maybe there is tranquility and maybe love, and I don't know, but this is the story that I tell myself. So I know why I wake up in the morning, why I work, and I will try to do what I think is right until the negative aspect of me, either they take over, or they do, but I can control them, or I can't, and then you have, or anyone, but maybe the people I intended to make this video for will have to I will do what I can, and if I am what I think I am at the highest level, I will handle myself, I will handle the problems, and I will take care of myself. Yeah, okay. I will handle problems. I will handle the problems. But I have revealed some of the most personal, most embarrassing, not in the full detail, but in the broad perspective, and that's what I could do. But I will cling to what I know is best in me as long as I can, and if I have to struggle and fight against myself or against anyone or against everyone, I don't know, I will struggle for what I think is the most noble and the most worthy of being preserved, knowing that it implies sacrifices that maybe I think myself willing to take, maybe I won't, but I have no choice. So yeah, I will try to protect and preserve what I think is worthy of preserving and protecting, and to negate the negative in me and to make the positive shine in a way. I will stop talking about poetry now because I'm really tired, but I shared what I wanted to share. Yeah.